like either a coup or a planned coup, and it's basically it's a march towards dictatorship and a national security state. The government really needs to create a climate of fear in Washington and throughout the country. And for my friends tell me, educated, traveled friends, it's succeeding. They want to be secure. They want to be safe. They don't want to fly to foreign countries because who knows what will happen there. And it's just absolutely astonishing to me.
Oh, my God. So, again, in your own words, please flesh this out. As, a well-respected 20-year State Department high level, you basically were concurring. You've got this foreign brigade the CIA created. They bring them in here, and they attack us, even according to their official story. You've got Colonel Stephen Butler, head of Monterey Defense Language, saying, I don't know what happened on 9/11, but Muhammad Atta and others were in my school a year before. Something is going on, and we have, I mean, it's right there in front of us. They brought these guys in to attack us or be the decoys or the dummies or whatever happened. We know they brought them in. We know they protected them, and we know they're using it to take our rights. I mean, bottom line, inside job.
Yeah, it's much like, as I said, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation when I was interviewed, must be 9 years ago now, that, it looked to me like this was done deliberately. All it cost was 3,000 odd lives in New York City and Washington. And look what they get out of it. They get a war against all of the Arabs and Muslims in the world. They get American bases around the world. I mean, the American bases today stand at close to 1,000. There are American soldiers in I can't say every country of the world, but an awful lot of them. And they're out there, and they're antagonizing the locals with their presence, with their actions. Like in Okinawa, they're continually raping women and picking fights. So it's we're our own worst enemy, but they want this. They want wars because wars are very good at creating markets for weapons and bombs and things that are used up. It isn't something that you buy a car and you sell a car and you make this and you make that. You can only have so many washing machines, but you can drop an infinite number of bombs because you're continually making them in factories.
And tax the American people to pay for it.
Oh, exactly.
So where do we go from here? Obama's continuing secret arrest, torture, expanding wars. We have the underwear bomber, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, BBC, New York Times, in the week before the Christmas Day underwear bombing, all reported thousands of U.S. troops and advisors in Yemen launching a new war. Then right on time, the underwear bomber does this, and then I interview lawyers on board the aircraft and others. Some smart-dressed man brings him on, argues with security people, but was able to prevail. Obviously a government agent, gets the underwear bomber on the plane. The FBI lies about that, now admits that happened. That's ABC News, but buried in the article. The Detroit News reports once they get off in Detroit, another man, the dogs alert on his bag, they grab him, say they have a bomb, get out. The FBI lies and says that didn't happen, but then now confirms it did. And then the Justice Department, and this is in the Detroit News here in my stack, the Justice Department, buried in an article in the Detroit News, terror suspect kept visa to avoid tipping off larger investigation. They have the Kennedy said in testimony before the House Committee on Homeland Security, Patrick F. Kennedy, Undersecretary for Management of State Department, they said we had to let him on the plane and we had to give him the visa because we didn't want to tip off Al-Qaeda. I mean, how obvious does this get?
Yeah. I mean, it's like Richard Reed, the shoe bomber. I mean, he's going to blow up the plane, but he doesn't do it in the washroom. He tries to set fire to his shoe in the cabin. People don't question this. They accept whatever the government tells them.
How do you get the American people to go along with an evil empire? You stage terror attacks. That's what Hitler did. Yeah.
The burning of the Reichstag.
My God, Mr. Springman, what are we going to do? I mean, it's never ending.
And it gets increasingly harder to throw them out. I mean, what we need is a real second party, but we have the Democrats, the Republicans united in forcing their soldiers into unwilling countries all around the world.
Well, I apologize to you. Jason Burmis interviewed you for Fabled Enemies. It's been out for a year and a half. It's an excellent film, and I I hadn't even sent you a copy, so before you leave us, I'll get your address and send you one. People can find out more and see Mr. Springman present this information in Fabled Enemies. It wasn't fun for me. And I want to come back and talk to you about where you see all this going and other tidbits of info you've got for us. But it was hard for me to read the RAND Corporation and Pentagon white papers and see the Pentagon saying, here's bin Laden, he's about to get you. When he attacks you, America's going to change. And I saw this in the 6 months before 9/11, and I said, they're probably about to stage an attack using their CIA asset, bin Laden, which was admitted CIA. They're probably going to attack the World Trade Center because the feds cooked the bomb, trained the driver. They told Ahmad Salam, the security agent from Egypt, that they were setting him up. Then they told him we're going to let the bombing go forward. He intelligently knew they were setting him up, recorded him. That was in the New York Times. So I knew they were getting ready for this. So it wasn't easy for me to go on air before 9/11 and say they're going to do it, and then the day of it. But, I mean, what am I supposed to do here? I'm not stupid. I know how governments operate, and I have to tell the truth. And I hope the American people realize you're the target of the police state that comes out of this. I know it's fun to hate foreign brown people, but you're the target of this. We'll be right back with Mr. Springman. Amazing interview. The government is clearly getting ready to launch fake cyber attacks on the internet in the name of shutting it down as it's now known. They're openly announcing this. White House regulations are Cass Sunstein says they want to shut down free speech. That's coming up after Mr. Springman leaves us, but I do want to ask him that and some other questions. But, sir, I remember seeing an L.A. Times article and another Washington Post article. This is actually covered in my film Road to Tyranny, where it's not just Islamicists out of Saudi Arabia or Afghanistan they're using against all these different countries, including us, but that the Pentagon and other private corporate networks, the Israelis and others, the British, and we know the British have been caught as well. The Israelis admit they created, quote, fake al-Qaeda groups. That's Jerusalem Post every time there was about to be a peace deal. But 3,400 and then another 1,500 or so under Clinton, but the first 3,000 under Bush, they brought Iraqi Republican Guard in. And then they were involved, I mean, I've interviewed the local police, it was on the local news, with McVeigh on the Oklahoma City bombing. I mean, now talking to former colleagues and others, do we have any idea how many of these terrorists they brought in?
Not really. I've been asked that a couple of times, and the best that I could estimate during the year and a half or so I was in Jeddah was that there were maybe a couple of hundred people that whose visa applications I challenged and who I rejected during the required interview. In actual fact, as Joe Trento, the journalist, asked me, he said, well, what happens if somebody comes to you with a clean passport and a believable cover story? Would you issue the visa? And I said, yes. And there was one instance where the CIA base chief, Eric Qualkenbush, who's retired now and living in Findlay, Ohio, he came to me and said, Mike, wink, wink, I've got a guy for you, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. He's been to the States before. He's one of our people. We want to bring him over, and we want to talk to him in Washington. He's going to come to you, make it look good. Well, the guy was an Iranian who ran a rug shop, and he had been to the States, had visas, was going to check on his network of outlets in the United States and deal with shipping issues and sales and things like that. And I issued the visa. And I said, well, geez, why did this guy have to come to me and say, we want you to issue this, when the guy had a perfectly legitimate reason for going to the United States and had been there before and had a legitimate business going on in Saudi Arabia. And I thought, well, geez, what's the story with these people? All these people I rejected, if they had come to me beforehand like they did with the Iranian guy and said, Mike, we're doing this thing in the States, we want you to take care of these guys, and they'd given me some hints as to what was going on, I was dumb enough at the time to have issued the visas without question. There was a political officer who really worked for the CIA as a case officer in the clandestine service, Karen Sasahara. She wanted me to issue a visa to a Somali guy, and he had no reason for going to the United States. He was a refugee in Saudi Arabia. He was unemployed in Saudi Arabia. And I kept rejecting the guy, so she went to the chief of the visa section and said, I want this guy, and the guy gave him the visa. And when I asked Justice Stevens about this, who is the chief of the section, and whom I wonder about, he said, it was national security reasons we had to give him the visa.
Well, again, we see this repeated like Groundhog Day over and over again. The father of the underwear bomber, others specifically saying he's at training camps, he's probably going to attack, don't let him in. And then they said, we just screwed up. And then it turned out they ordered him to be allowed to fly here. And who can be smart dressed and get someone through security without a passport?
You can't do it. I was in Germany, and I had a diplomatic passport, and my daughter came to visit. I wanted to go past security and take her to the airplane, and they wouldn't let me.